49ers update here from Orlando at the owners meetings where we spoke to John Lynch for over 30 minutes just a couple hours ago. Article coming up soon on The Athletic. Obviously, we will address the Brandon Aiyuk Instagram story where I believe with emojis he was saying that money talks and bullshit walks. This situation is already leading toward the path of being overblown if it's not there already. But John Lynch wants the 49ers to re-sign Brandon Aiyuk. He acknowledges that it won't be easy because the 49ers are obviously in a tight salary cap situation with all the big contracts they've had to give out, with the big contracts projected to be given out in the future. Brock Purdy is obviously Exhibit A. So the 49ers are playing hardball in negotiations, just like they had to play hardball in negotiations with Deebo Samuel 2 years ago, Nick Bosa last year. We are still 5 months from the point where Samuel and Bosa signed their contracts, just on a rough timeline. So obviously we're still early in negotiations. Sometimes negotiations feature a little bit of drama. If Brandon Aiyuk's emojis today are indeed about those negotiations, well, then it's slightly reminiscent of the Deebo Samuel situation, but probably a better overall position for the 49ers since Aiyuk has not formally requested a trade. That's obviously what Deebo Samuel did a couple seasons ago, but the 49ers still ultimately reached an agreement with him. That's the most likely scenario with Brandon Aiyuk. And today, John Lynch even said that no, there haven't been any trade discussions regarding Brandon Aiyuk. And I think that, sometimes stuff can get lost in translation. When we talk about king's ransom, well, every man in the NFL has his price. Maybe the only true exception to that was last season with Nick Bosa, where the 49ers said that any trade discussion would be an absolute non-starter. But just look at it from a business reality. If you get a big enough offer for any player, except for Nick Bosa last year, you'll sit down and talk. But the market dictates that the 49ers won't get an offer that's big enough to justify them even thinking about trading Brandon Aiyuk this year because he's such a good player. He's such a good blocker. Today, John Lynch said that Brandon Aiyuk is a warrior. That's what the 49ers call him. And he's developed into a warrior under the tutelage of Kyle Shanahan. So he means so much to the 49ers, both from an X's and O's level, but also on a spiritual level for this football team. He is the type of A-lister that the 49ers want to pay. And he is the type of A-lister that the 49ers have consistently paid over the course of this regime. Every single A-lister that this team has developed over the course of this regime has been paid when contract time has come up. So the belt probably has to tighten for the 49ers at some point, but John Lynch seems confident and seems that he wants to make sure that he fits Brandon Aiyuk into that restrained cap situation. And anything beyond that is drama because Brandon Aiyuk is under contract for this 2024 season. It's not like he has a choice of where he wants to go. And that's probably causing some of the frustration on Brandon's part. But at the end of the day, the 49ers team has control of the situation here, and he's under contract for $14.1 million in 2024. On the 49ers free agent signees, we have contract details for Leonard Floyd, a deal worth up to $10 million annually, but Parag Marathe has managed to keep his 2024 cap hit down at $3.4 million. So more cap gymnastics for the 49ers. They did that with a signing bonus of over $10 million for Leonard Floyd, and then 3 void years on top of the 2-year deal. So it's essentially a year plus a team option in 2025 for the 49ers with Leonard Floyd, who they really, really love his effort. John Lynch today was saying they liked Floyd back when he came out of the draft all that many years ago. They think he's going to be a really reliable bookend to Nick Bosa. Then there's Yetur Gross-Matos, who, his cap hit's almost as big as Leonard Floyd's this year. It's funny. John Lynch said that Gross-Matos' agent ran this like a house sale in Los Altos. He set the price low and then let everybody bid on it and drove the price up. But still, 2 years, $18 million, and that's the max value of this deal. Cap hit of only $3.2 million this year. Essentially, the 49ers have a team option for a relatively unproven player in 2025. The thing with Gross-Matos, though, is that he played in a 3-4 in Carolina. His hand was in the dirt some of the time, but not all of the time. His hand's going to be in the dirt all of the time in a 4-3 of the 49ers, and they think that his best football is going to fit in that 4-3. They think he's going to be like an Amenahu or an Arden Key. John Lynch mentioned both of those guys specifically today. You line him up outside on base downs, and then he could shift inside on those pass downs, and he could really use his length to work against guards. They think that Chris Kasarik will get the best out of Yetur Gross-Matos, and at a cap hit of only $3.2 million this year, with that effective team option in 2025, I think it makes sense. Devondre Campbell, the linebacker. This is interesting. I didn't realize this, but Kyle Shanahan actually coached against Campbell at practice in 2016 when Campbell was a rookie, a 4th-round pick of the Atlanta Falcons. Shanahan was the offensive coordinator back then, and supposedly Kyle's been a fan of Devondre ever since. And John Lynch today acknowledged that Dre Greenlaw might begin this season on PUP, that the 49ers are bracing for that PUP list for Dre Greenlaw coming off the Achilles, and they really believe that Devondre Campbell is a linebacker who plays with their style that will be able to allow them to bridge the gap until Dre comes back. And then once Dre does come back from the Achilles, whenever that happens, then you have Fred Warner, Dre Greenlaw, and Devondre Campbell. You're stronger linebackers 1-3 than you were last year, right? When it really, I thought, dropped off when, especially in the Super Bowl after Dre Greenlaw got hurt. Isaac Yiadom. John Lynch said he had a discussion with the cornerback who played his best football last year for the Saints after he filled in for Paulson Adebo. 14 pass breakups and only about half a season of play. So Isaac Yiadom was really damn good last year. Lynch said that, he talked to Yiadom and he asked him, well, what's the deal? Why did your best football so markedly show up this year after several seasons of relative inconsistency? And Lynch said that Yiadom told him about just gaining confidence, deciding that it was go time. It reminded John of his own career, and John was a Hall of Fame safety, but it wasn't until year 3 that John Lynch became a full-time starter. So I just thought that was interesting. Special teams, obviously, a big part of what the 49ers were looking at this offseason. Chase Lucas and Ezekiel Turner, both big-time special teams guys. Lucas from the Lions, gunner. Ezekiel Turner has blocked a punt against the 49ers in 2020. They're looking to bolster that side of the ball. And that phase of the game will also be bolstered by Isaac Yiadom, who Lynch said even when he was still inconsistent as a defensive back before this past season, was a really good special teams player. So that's obviously a focus for the 49ers. Remember, they finished number 25 DVOA in special teams last year. So that's obviously something that they're looking to ameliorate here in this 2024 season. Finally, Malik Collins. I talked to D'Amico Ryans this morning, the coach of the Texans. He coached Collins last year, the defensive tackle. 49ers got $10 million in cap savings versus what they were set to pay Eric Armstead. They replaced him with Collins, defensive tackle, who played in the same system that the 49ers run since D'Amico and the 49ers staff was with Houston last year. So the 49ers actually believe that Collins is going to be a plug and play addition for their defense, since they've already seen him execute in the system. And that leads me to Armstead. It doesn't seem like there are any hard feelings in the 49ers toward Armstead. They wanted him to take a bigger pay cut than he was willing to take. And John Lynch actually said, I'm happy for Eric Armstead. He bet on himself and it worked out, because you see that Jacksonville and Trent Baalke, who's also here at the owners' meetings, they were willing to pay Eric up to $14.5 million this year, $28 million fully guaranteed over 2 years. The 49ers weren't willing to honor the $18 million that was non-guaranteed in Armstead's 2024 contract. They wanted a number that obviously was lower than $14 million. I'm guessing the 49ers probably wanted him to take a number at about $10 million. So Jacksonville split the difference, about $14 million a year for Eric Armstead. It worked out for him, and for the 49ers, they got a guy at an $8.47 million number in Malik Collins versus the $18 million number that Eric Armstead was initially set to take up. So $10 million in savings for the 49ers. Eric Armstead has more money than he would have had with San Francisco, and the 49ers probably have a better chance to re-sign somebody like Brandon Aiyuk now, a better chance to reach an agreement on that sort of deal, despite the drama that is happening there. Moving on, the safety market. John Lynch was talking about how much of a beating the safety market has taken. The 49ers have hosted veterans like Rayshawn Jenkins and Julian Blackmon. They haven't signed anybody yet. They say that Talanoa Hufanga is recovering well from his knee surgery, but they still have the type of numbers at that position where you'd think that a signing would be possible. Interestingly to me, Lynch mentioned Tashaun Gibson, who's been with the team over the past 2 seasons. He's going to be 34 years old this coming year. It doesn't sound like Gibson has firmly decided whether or not he's going to play this year into age 34, but Lynch thinks that he's still playing at a really high level, and that it's a year-to-year thing for Gibson, and that if he does decide to play, it does sound like the 49ers would be, at the very least, very interested in re-signing him. I don't know if Julian Blackmon's off the table. Justin Simmons is still out there. I mean, he's an all-pro that's still out there at age 30. My read on it is that the 49ers know that the safety market has been bad for safeties, and they're waiting to see if one of these guys, like Justin Simmons or Julian Blackmon, takes a deal that's very favorable to them, to the team, because that's what the 49ers could theoretically afford. And at this point, if the market is in the team's favor, they might as well wait. But the good news there is that the 49ers do believe that Talanoa Hufanga is recovering well from his ACL tear. 2 other injury notes: Charvarius Ward and George Kittle both underwent core muscle surgery. I think they both underwent it at the Vincera Institute in Philadelphia. Same injury or similar injury. They're both playing through a lot of pain this year, but they should be alleviated from that pain next season. 49ers expect both of those guys to be ready by training camp of this 2024 season. Brandon Staley, 49ers assistant head coach, yes, he was very, very involved in the free agency process. John Lynch was talking about how he had a lot of very smart takes, and Leonard Floyd is somebody who has been coached by Brandon Staley before, so you see the definite link there. And Staley was also on Denver's staff with Vic Fangio when Isaac Yiadom was there in 2019. So you have to wonder if Brandon Staley had some input in that hire. Lynch, I think, really clarified the role of Brandon Staley. This is something I've already reported on, but I thought it was interesting that he noted that new 49ers defensive coordinator Nick Sorensen, who was an internal hire, laid out a really good vision for bringing the defense back to its basics. And following the 1-year experiment with Steve Wilks, which obviously didn't go the way the 49ers wanted to, I think going back to the basics was really important. They brought Wilks in, though, because they did want to bring an outside voice in, and they did want to evolve as a defense. I just think that it got a little out of control, that outside voice had a little too much authority, and it created a situation where the 49ers and Shanahan didn't vibe well with Wilks, and obviously the front and the coverage didn't mesh well. So I think the 49ers have still wanted to maintain that outside fresh idea infusion, and that's going to come via Brandon Staley, but he's in a lower position than Wilks was. He's not the defensive coordinator. He's simply an assistant on that side of the ball to the defensive coordinator, to the head coach. But they've been impressed with Brandon Staley so far, and you actually see some of his fingerprints in free agency. So what else do we have here? Ooh, quarterback market. Lynch mentioned the 49ers were waiting on Sam Darnold, but he took, as I reported, more money from Minnesota. Speaking to some people on the Minnesota side, Brian Griese's developed quite the reputation around the league, just with the footwork and that. Quarterbacks come into the 49ers system and then they leave it. The footwork is a lot better. Obviously, Kyle Shanahan's not working with quarterbacks on technique. He's a head coach. He's not a position coach, but Brian Griese supposedly around the league, it sounds like he's getting a lot of credit for some of the progress that we're seeing quarterbacks make. And the Brian Griese School of Quarterback Rehab, well, we saw Sam Darnold pass through it, get a pay raise up to $10 million. Because of that, obviously, the 49ers went to Josh Dobbs and Brandon Allen as QBs 2 and 3 in their room. And Dobbs and Allen are going to be competing for that job. Going through my notes, I wouldn't be surprised if the 49ers traded in the draft. I tried to ask John Lynch about that to see, hey, I said, this roster seems crowded, 10 picks. Is it going to be challenging to find a way to fit? Make sure you pick guys that can fit onto this roster that can actually make the team. And he said that they're really excited to have all 10 of their picks, especially the first rounder. But he didn't rule out the possibility of consolidating for a trade. I think in all likelihood, that's something that you can't decide this early on. You can arm yourself with options, which is what free agency has done. They've filled their main needs, and now they can just really draft looking for really good players. So that gives you a chance to potentially consolidate picks, move up. grab an offensive tackle, grab a stud offensive lineman, because we know the 49ers need to improve there. So I think those options are on the table, but Lynch is realistic, and he knows that you can't really chart those options until the draft hits, because those are game time offers, game time decisions with these kind of trades. It's really hard to simulate until the battle actually begins. All right, we went through everything. Kyle Shanahan speaks tomorrow. That's after the party. I'm going to the league party right now. It's become an annual tradition. Kyle Shanahan goes to the league party, and he has to speak at 7:45 the next morning. But don't buy into that Brandon Aiyuk drama. That's all it is. It's drama. You've heard the truth of the 49ers stance here. That's it from the owners' meetings here in Orlando. We'll talk to you very soon.